The millionaire needed an assistant, but he never expected the chaos in the form of a woman. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Ethan Cole's office on the 47th floor overlooked the gray Manhattan skyline, its glass walls catching the morning light like polished steel. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and tension. His third assistant had quit that morning crying, mumbling something about unrealistic expectations and robotic bosses. Ethan didn't even flinch. Deadlines didn't care about feelings, and chaos had no place in his world. Until chaos walked right in, wearing sneakers and holding the wrong resume. The elevator chimed. A young woman stepped out, clearly lost, clutching a cup of takeout coffee that was far too large for her small hands. Her hair was a little wild from the wind, her blazer slightly mismatched with her floral skirt. Ethan didn't look up at first, his eyes were on his laptop, but he heard the nervous knock. "Mr. Cole?" she said, voice soft but bright. "I'm here for the assistant position." He frowned. "You're early," he said without checking. "Most people don't survive the waiting room." "Well," she said, smiling uncertainly, "I got tired of waiting." When he finally looked up, his jaw tightened just slightly. She was nothing like the type he usually hired. No polished edges, no rehearsed poise. "Name?" he asked. "Lena Hart?" "Experience?" "Mostly coffee and chaos," she said before she could stop herself. He blinked, not sure if she was joking. She bit her lip, regretting it instantly. "I mean, I used to work at a cafe, and I handled, chaotic customers." His brow arched. "So you're a barista applying to run my schedule, coordinate investor calls, and manage multi-million-dollar operations?" "Technically, yes," she said. There was something about her tone, equal parts, fear and fire, that made him pause. Most people folded under his stare. She didn't. "You realize this job requires precision?" he asked. "Then maybe I'm exactly what you need," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Someone who knows how to keep calm when things spill." For a second, something unfamiliar flickered in his chest. Amusement? Interest? He shut his laptop with a click. "Fine. 30 days. Trial period. If you're still standing after that, we'll talk." "Standing?" she asked, half laughing. "Breathing would be nice too." He didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth twitched before he looked away. "You start tomorrow. 8 a.m. sharp." "Got it." She turned to leave but stopped, glancing at his empty desk. "You should eat breakfast," she said softly. "People who forget food tend to forget joy too." The elevator doors closed behind her before he could respond. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole stared at the city and felt something he didn't have a name for. Maybe curiosity, maybe trouble. Either way, he had a feeling that this new assistant, this girl who smelled like coffee and optimism, was about to ruin his perfectly controlled life, one smile at a time. The next morning, Lena woke before sunrise. Her tiny apartment above a laundromat smelled faintly of detergent and burnt coffee. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the thin envelope of unpaid bills stacked on her nightstand. The city outside was already alive, car horns echoing through the cracked window, but she felt frozen between exhaustion and hope. 30 days. She had 30 days to prove herself to Ethan Cole, a man who looked like he had never missed a deadline or a heartbeat. Her reflection in the small bathroom mirror looked tired but determined. She brushed her hair into a neat ponytail, slipped into her only pair of office shoes, and whispered, "You can do this, Lena." She left a note on the kitchen counter next to a half-eaten muffin. "Mom, I will visit after my shift. Please take your medicine on time." Her mother's condition had worsened since the accident last year. The hospital bills had swallowed every cent Lena saved from her cafe job. When her old manager cut her hours, she had taken any work she could find: dog walking, babysitting, food delivery, but nothing could cover rent and prescriptions at the same time. Becoming an assistant to a millionaire was absurd, almost laughable. Yet absurdity sometimes felt like her only option. The subway was crowded, the air thick with perfume and impatience. She held the metal pole and rehearsed what she would say if she messed up. "Sorry, Mr. Cole, I will fix it. Sorry, Mr. Cole, it will never happen again." She smiled bitterly at her own reflection in the window. He probably fired people before lunch for less. Still, she had seen something in his eyes yesterday, a flicker of curiosity, maybe even softness behind all that precision. It had been years since anyone looked at her like she might surprise them in a good way. When she arrived at the towering glass building of Coal Industries, the security guard scanned her visitor badge and raised an eyebrow. "First day?" he asked. "Something like that," she said, forcing a grin. Her heels clicked on the marble floor as she stepped into the elevator. By the time the doors opened to the 47th floor, her palms were slick with sweat. Ethan was already at his desk, typing. Immaculate as always, dark suit, silver watch, not a hair out of place. "You are 3 minutes early," he said without looking up. "Traffic," she replied automatically, then realized what she had said and added quickly. "But I ran." He finally glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Sit. Your tasks are in the folder on the desk. Start with the meeting summary from yesterday, and please, do not spill anything on my laptop." She wanted to laugh, but decided against it. "Got it, boss." She scanned the documents, her heart pounding as she realized she understood almost nothing of the financial jargon. Her cafe experience had not prepared her for corporate reports filled with acronyms and numbers that looked like phone codes. Still, she took notes furiously, determined to learn fast. At one point, she accidentally hit the wrong key and the printer whirred to life, spitting out 50 copies of the company's quarterly report. The noise startled her. Ethan turned slowly. Their eyes met. "Do you usually print forests on your first day?" he asked dryly. Her cheeks burned. "I was testing the system?" He exhaled, half sigh, half laugh, shaking his head. "You are persistent. I prefer adaptable," she said quietly. Something in her tone made him stop for a second before returning to his screen. The day dragged on with endless instructions and silent glances. Yet when she brought him coffee at noon, she noticed his untouched sandwich still sitting in the corner. Without thinking, she slid the plate closer to him. "Eat," she said softly. "People who skip meals get cranky, and I need this job." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a brief second his cold composure cracked. "You are very forward for an assistant," he said. "And you are very human for a robot," she replied before realizing the words had escaped. Silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a real one this time, small but undeniable. When she left his office that evening, the city lights flickered on below like a sea of stars. She still had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in months, she felt the faint pulse of possibility. 30 days might not be enough to change her life, but maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to start living it again. By the end of her first week, Lena had stopped counting how many times she nearly got fired. She spilled coffee on the conference table, sent a calendar invite to the wrong client, and once called Ethan's private line thinking it was the printer service. Yet, somehow, she was still there. Maybe because every mistake came with an apology and a quick fix, or maybe because beneath Ethan Cole's polished exterior, something in him needed a reminder that perfection was not the same as progress. On Monday morning, she found a yellow sticky note on her desk. "Meeting at 9, bring summary, and coffee, 2 sugars." There was no signature, but she smiled anyway. He never used sticky notes before. Maybe it was his version of humor. She arrived at his office with 2 cups, and the printed reports stacked neatly in a folder. Ethan was pacing by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice calm but sharp. "If the numbers do not match by noon, cancel the deal." He ended the call and turned toward her, his eyes scanning the folder. "You fixed the margin errors," he said, surprised. "Yes. I watched 3 tutorial videos last night." "You watched videos to learn my report format?" "I like challenges," she said simply. He studied her for a long moment. "Or chaos," he murmured. She grinned. "Maybe both." It became their quiet rhythm. He demanded precision. She brought energy. He corrected her. She teased him for it. Every morning she placed a small note beside his coffee quotes like, "Breathe before the next crisis," or, "Even robots need a reboot." He never mentioned them, but she noticed he never threw them away either. One afternoon, while she was organizing the supply cabinet, her phone buzzed. The hospital's number flashed on the screen. Her heart dropped. "Miss Hart," the nurse said, "your mother's blood pressure spiked again. She is stable now, but we recommend you visit tonight." Thank you, Lena whispered, clutching the phone. She finished the rest of the day on autopilot, her mind drifting back to the hospital room, the smell of disinfectant, her mother's frail hands. When 5 o'clock came, she gathered her things quickly, trying to slip out unnoticed. But Ethan's voice stopped her. Leaving early? She froze. I finished everything on the list, sir. That is not what I asked. She turned. His gaze was steady, unreadable. My mother is in the hospital, she admitted softly. I need to check on her. His expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. Do you need the company car? She blinked, startled. What? No, I can take the subway. It will be faster, he said simply, grabbing his keys. I will drive. You? Drive? Yourself? She said before thinking. He raised an eyebrow. Do you expect the car to drive itself? The corner of her mouth lifted. Honestly, yes. But the humor faded when she saw the sincerity in his eyes. For the first time, he looked less like her intimidating boss, and more like a man trying to understand kindness again. The drive was quiet, the city lights blurring past. At the hospital, Lena thanked him and hurried inside. He waited in the car, checking emails, but his thoughts kept drifting to the girl running down the hallway with too big shoes and too much heart. When she returned half an hour later, her shoulders looked heavier. She is okay, Lena said, exhaling. For now. He nodded once. You should take tomorrow off. No, she said quickly. I cannot afford to. You can, he said. That is an order. For a moment, she did not know whether to laugh or cry. You are impossible, she said. So I have been told, he replied. When he dropped her off, she hesitated by the door. Thank you, she said quietly, for the ride and for not firing me. His lips curved in the faintest smile. Do not thank me yet. There is still tomorrow. As she stepped out into the cool night, Lena realized something had changed. Beneath all his precision, Ethan had shown a glimpse of care. And beneath all her chaos, she had found a reason to stay. Neither of them knew it yet, but the line between order and emotion had already begun to blur. By the second week, the rules on Ethan's desk had started to blur. His famous no personal talk policy was already cracked, thanks to one curious assistant who seemed allergic to silence. Lena brought color into every corner of his grayscale world. Her yellow planner sat beside his silver laptop. Her bright sticky notes invaded the edges of his reports, and her laughter occasionally echoed through the glass walls of Coal Industries like sunlight sneaking into a boardroom. He would never admit it aloud, but he did not mind. One morning, she walked in balancing 2 coffees and a brown paper bag. Breakfast, she announced cheerfully. For you? He asked, eyeing the bag as if it were a threat. For us, she said. You skipped dinner last night. I heard your stomach growl during the call with investors. He looked scandalized. My stomach does not growl. It roared, she teased, handing him the bag. Try the croissant before it stages another protest. He hesitated, then gave up, taking a bite. Not bad, he muttered. Thank you, she said, pretending not to notice the way his expression softened. That morning became a turning point. Somewhere between spreadsheets and sarcasm, they began to understand each other. She learned his moods, the quiet before frustration, the sigh that meant he was tired but would never admit it. He learned her resilience, the way she bounced back from mistakes with stubborn optimism. Their arguments became part of the routine. When she misplaced a client file, he lectured her on precision. When he snapped too harshly, she left a note on his desk. Remember, even machines need kindness. He never replied. But the next day she found a new planner waiting for her, embossed with her initials. I thought you could use something better than post-its, he said casually. It is not charity, she said. I know, he replied, and she believed him. That evening, as rain streaked the office windows, Lena stayed late finishing reports. Ethan returned from a meeting, jacket draped over his arm. You are still here, he said. Deadlines do not care about sleep, she murmured. Neither do you, he replied quietly. She looked up. Someone has to keep up with you. He stopped beside her desk, studying the half-empty coffee cup, the tired eyes still shining with determination. You are too stubborn for your own good, he said. You are too lonely for yours, she answered softly before realizing what she had said. Silence filled the space between them. Ethan turned away first, adjusting his tie, though it did not need adjusting. Go home, Lena. "Yes, boss." But she did not move, not until he left. Later that night, as she stepped outside, the city smelled of wet asphalt and promise. The streetlights blurred in the drizzle, and she smiled to herself. For someone who had sworn to keep his world organized, Ethan Cole had started to let a little chaos in, and for someone who had always felt invisible, she finally felt seen. The next day, he handed her a new list of rules written in his meticulous handwriting. Rule 1. No skipping meals. Rule 2. No hospital visits without telling me. Rule 3. No arguing during meetings. Rule 4. Always carry a backup of your notes. Rule 5. Keep bringing coffee. She laughed as she read it. You just made a rule for coffee. It improves productivity, he said. It improves your mood, she countered. Exactly, he said with a rare, quiet smile. She looked at him then, realizing that his version of control was not just about power, it was about protecting the little order he had left in a life that once fell apart. And maybe, just maybe, her chaos was the one thing holding him together. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew. The line between professionalism and something deeper had just shifted, and there was no going back. The first real test came faster than either of them expected. 2 weeks into Lena's trial period, Cole Industries hosted its annual charity gala, an event that drew the city's wealthiest names and sharpest critics. For Ethan, it was just another night of strategic networking. For Lena, it was her first public appearance as his assistant and, unknowingly, the stage where their fragile balance would be pushed to its limit. The morning of the gala, she arrived early, balancing coffee cups and a garment bag. "What is that?" Ethan asked, glancing up from his laptop. "Your tux," she said simply. "You looked ready to attend a funeral last time. I borrowed a better one from wardrobe." He frowned. "You replaced my tuxedo?" "I improved it," she corrected. "You are welcome." He exhaled through his nose, half amused, half exasperated. "You are fearless, I will give you that." "You hired me for chaos, remember?" she said, flashing a grin. That evening, the ballroom shimmered with crystal lights and murmured laughter. Waiters glided between tables carrying champagne flutes, and the city's elite gathered around Ethan like bees to honey. Lena stayed close but quiet, clutching a clipboard and whispering reminders. "Table 6, donor names are reversed," she murmured. "Switch the cards before they notice." "Already handled," he replied without missing a beat. For the first hour, everything went smoothly until it did not. A well-known investor, Mr. Donovan, stumbled toward the bar, his drink sloshing dangerously. He made a snide comment about young staff who do not know their place, and Lena froze. Ethan saw it, the flicker of discomfort crossing her face. Before she could respond, Donovan sneered again. "I suppose Mr. Cole hires his assistants for decoration now." A sharp silence followed. Ethan's expression darkened, but before he could speak, Lena straightened her shoulders. "Actually," she said evenly, "he hired me because I do not break under pressure. You might want to try it sometime." The room stilled. Donovan's face reddened, and for a moment Ethan thought his career's clean image would explode in scandal. But then, something unexpected happened. The crowd began to applaud softly, first one, then several others, including a few reporters who admired her composure. Ethan's lips curved, a rare mix of pride and disbelief. Later, when the event ended, he found her outside on the terrace, arms crossed against the cool night breeze. "You disobeyed rule number 3, he said. "No arguing in public." "Technically, it was self-defense," she replied. "You humiliated an investor. He insulted your company." He paused, tilting his head. "And that is your concern because?" "Because it is my job to protect it," she said quietly. He studied her for a long moment, the city lights glinting behind him. "You are aware that stunt could have cost us a partnership." "Then maybe he was not the kind of partner you needed," she said. The air between them shifted. The strict lines that once defined their roles blurred with every word she spoke. He had built his empire on logic and control, but there was nothing logical about the way she made him feel steady one moment, unbalanced the next. "Finally," he said, "you were brave, reckless, but brave. I will take that as a compliment. It was not meant as one." "Too late," she said, smiling. For a moment he almost laughed. Almost. That night as he drove her home, neither of them spoke. But when she stepped out of the car, she leaned down to his window. "For what it is worth," she said, "I do not regret speaking up." He met her eyes, something unspoken flickering there. "Neither do I." When she walked away, Ethan stayed parked for a long time, the engine off, the night heavy around him. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar: pride that was not tied to numbers, admiration that had nothing to do with success. Lena Hart had managed the impossible. She had brought humanity into his carefully curated world. And somehow, it did not feel like chaos anymore. It felt like the beginning of something he could not define yet, but he knew he did not want to lose it. The Monday after the gala felt different. The office was quieter, as if the building itself was still whispering about what had happened that night. Lena walked in carrying 2 coffees like nothing had changed, but the glances from the staff told a different story. Word had spread fast. The new assistant had stood up to one of the city's most powerful investors, and Ethan Cole had not fired her for it. In fact, he had defended her. When she stepped into his office, he was already there, tie loosened, eyes scanning a report. "Morning," she said softly, setting the coffee beside his laptop. "1 sugar this time. You have been cutting back." "You noticed," he said without looking up. "I notice everything," she replied, then hesitated, waiting for the usual dry remark that never came. Instead, he closed the report and looked at her. "You handled yourself well at the gala," he said simply. "That is not what I expected." "Neither did I," she admitted, surprised by his tone. "I was terrified." "You did not look terrified." "That is because my knees were shaking under the table," she said, and he actually laughed quietly, but real. The sound startled her more than any reprimand could have. For the next few days, their rhythm shifted again. The walls between them thinned, replaced by quiet glances, accidental smiles, and moments that lingered longer than they should. When she dropped a stack of files, he bent down to help her, their hands brushing for just a second. It was nothing and everything. "You should be more careful," he said, his voice lower than usual. "Maybe you should stop making me nervous," she murmured. He froze for a heartbeat, then cleared his throat. "Lunch," he said abruptly. "We have a meeting downtown." The meeting turned into a rare moment of calm. They ate in silence at a small cafe near Central Park, the kind of place Ethan would never have chosen on his own. "I come here when I need to think," Lena said, stirring her tea. "It reminds me that the world is still bigger than my problems." "And do you think that helps?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said. "You should try it." "I do not take advice from assistants," he said, but his tone was softer than his words. "Then take it from a human being," she said, looking at him steadily. That silenced him for a long moment. When they returned to the office, the air felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. Later that evening, while she was packing up, a storm rolled over the city. The rain hit the glass windows hard, and thunder echoed between skyscrapers. The power flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. "Backup generator will kick in," Ethan said calmly, but the emergency lights stayed dim. "Looks like it did not," she said, holding her phone flashlight. "Do not tell me the mighty coal industries cannot handle a little rain." "We can handle it," he said, though he sounded less confident than usual. She laughed quietly, the sound echoing in the near darkness. "You know, you are almost human when you are not scowling." "Almost?" he asked. "Well, there is still room for improvement," she teased. For a moment, neither of them moved. Outside, lightning lit up the skyline, casting his profile in silver. He looked different like that, less guarded, more real. "You should go," he said finally. "The elevators will not work until power returns," she replied. "Looks like you are stuck with me." They ended up sitting by the window, sharing stories they never thought they would tell. She talked about her mother's illness, about fear and hope and exhaustion. He spoke about growing up with a father who measured love in success and silence. When he paused, she said softly, "No wonder you do not let people close. It must feel safer that way." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time his eyes did not feel cold. "And you?" he asked. "Why do you keep caring even when it hurts?" "Because someone has to," she whispered. The rain slowed, the lights flickered back on, and the spell broke. She stood, smoothing her skirt. "See? The world did not end." "No," he said quietly. "It just changed." That night, as she left the office, she felt something new stirring in her chest, a warmth that scared her more than failure ever had. Whatever was happening between them was no longer part of the job. It was something neither of them could control. And for once, Ethan Cole did not seem to want to. The storm passed, but what it left behind was harder to weather. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office earlier than usual, his expression unreadable. Lena sensed something was off the moment she walked in. He was distant, colder than before, as if the night they shared in quiet conversation had never happened. "Good morning," she said carefully. "Meeting agenda is ready." "Leave it on the desk," he replied without looking up. The warmth that had begun to bloom between them froze instantly. She swallowed her disappointment and did as told. All day, he kept their interactions strictly professional, his tone clipped, his words measured. Every time their eyes met, he looked away first. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, but deep down, she knew it was everything. By late afternoon, gossip started circling the office. Someone from accounting had seen them leaving together after the storm, and rumors spread like wildfire. When Lena walked into the break room, whispers stopped mid-sentence. She pretended not to notice, though her chest tightened. At lunch, she overheard two employees murmuring, "She must be sleeping her way to a promotion." Her hands trembled around her coffee cup. That evening, as she was about to leave, Ethan called her back. "Close the door," he said. She obeyed, her heart pounding. "Is it true you have been talking to the press?" he asked abruptly. "What?" "Of course not," she said, shocked. "Someone leaked confidential details about the Donovan deal. And you think it was me?" "You were there that night," he said coldly. "People are questioning your position here. So instead of defending me, you are accusing me." "I am trying to protect the company," he snapped. "You are trying to protect yourself," she shot back. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. His jaw tightened. "You may take the rest of the week off," he said finally, "without pay." "You are firing me?" "I am giving you space to think," he said, voice low. "About what?" she asked, blinking back tears. "About whether you belong here." Her throat burned, but she refused to let him see her break. "I thought I already proved that." "So did I," he said quietly, and looked away. She left without another word. Outside, the city lights blurred through her tears. For the first time since she met him, Lena wished she had never walked into that office by mistake. 2 days later, she sat at the hospital beside her mother, pretending everything was fine. Her mother smiled weakly. "You look tired, honey." "Just work things," Lena said, brushing her hand gently. "Nothing I cannot handle." But her voice trembled. Her phone buzzed with notifications, headlines about coal industries under internal investigation. The words twisted in her stomach. Someone really had leaked the deal, and now the company's reputation was at risk. She typed a message to Ethan, hesitated, and deleted it. He would not believe her anyway. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his penthouse, the city skyline stretching endlessly outside the window. The truth gnawed at him. He knew Lena's character, her honesty, her fire, but fear had made him cruel. Trust was not something he gave easily, and now he realized he had broken the one person who had never lied to him. When his assistant forwarded the investigation report that evening, Ethan froze. The leak had come from Donovan's own assistant, not Lena. The evidence was clear. His stomach dropped. He had accused the wrong person. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt shame, a deep, quiet ache that no amount of control could fix. He closed his laptop and grabbed his keys. The rain had started again, soft and relentless. Somewhere across the city, a woman who once brought chaos into his perfect world was sitting in silence, believing he had destroyed her faith. He knew then that if he did not make it right, he would lose more than an assistant. He would lose the only person who ever saw the man behind the title. That night, Ethan drove through the rain like a man chasing his own guilt. Every red light felt like punishment. Every streetlight reflected the memory of her face when he told her to leave. When he reached her apartment building, he sat in the car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. How do you apologize to someone you have broken in all the ways words cannot fix? He finally stepped out and climbed the narrow stairs to her floor. The hallway smelled faintly of old paint and detergent. When he knocked, there was no answer at first. Then the door opened a crack, and Lena appeared, her eyes tired, her hair pulled into a messy bun. "Ethan?" she said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I was wrong," he said immediately, rain dripping from his coat. "The leak did not come from you. I saw the report. It was Donovan's assistant." She stared at him, her expression unreadable. "So you came all this way to tell me I was innocent? Congratulations, you figured it out 2 days too late." He flinched at her tone. Lena, do not, she interrupted. Do not say you are sorry. You made me believe that everything I did, everything I gave, meant nothing. That is not true. Isn't it? She said, her voice trembling. You told me to think about whether I belonged. I did. And maybe I do not belong in a place where trust is just another transaction. She moved to close the door, but he caught it gently. You belong where you want to be, he said softly. And if that is not beside me, I will understand. But you should know the company is not the same without you. I am not the same. The words hung in the air, raw and unpolished. She blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. Ethan, this is not about work, she whispered. It never was. He nodded slowly. Then let me fix what I broke. You cannot fix trust, she said, tears brimming. You earn it back, one truth at a time. He took a deep breath, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out a familiar yellow planner, the one she had left on her desk weeks ago. Inside it, he had written something in his precise handwriting. She took it, flipping to the first page. There, under the heading, Tasks, was a single line. Do not forget to breathe today. Beneath it, he had added, I did, until you. Her throat tightened. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, quietly, she stepped aside. Come in before you drown out there, she said. Inside, the apartment was small, but warm. He stood awkwardly by the couch as she handed him a towel. You really drove across the city in this weather? She asked. I had to, he said. You once told me chaos could be good for me. Turns out you were right. Losing you was the first real chaos I could not handle. She looked at him, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. You hurt me, she said. I know, he replied. And if you walk away now, I will not stop you. But if there is any part of you that still believes in second chances, I am asking for one. Her silence stretched between them like a held breath. Then she exhaled. You have a lot to learn about forgiveness, she said softly. I am a fast learner, he answered. Something fragile shifted between them, the beginning of repair. She handed him a mug of coffee, her peace offering. You are still impossible, she said. So are you, he replied, smiling faintly. They sat together in the quiet, listening to the rain soften against the window. It was not a perfect ending, not yet, but it was a beginning one built not on contracts or conditions, but on honesty. And for Ethan Cole, that was more terrifying and more beautiful than anything he had ever signed in his life. A year later, the city looked different, though it was the same skyline that once towered over their chaos. Coal industries had changed too. The walls were brighter, the employees smiled more, and the break room now had a coffee machine that Lena had personally picked out. Ethan Cole still came to work early, still read every report line by line, but the man who once measured success in silence had learned something new: how to laugh, how to listen, how to breathe. The yellow planner sat framed on his desk, the same page open with her note, "Do not forget to breathe today." Below it, in his handwriting, was the same confession. I did until you. Lena was no longer his assistant. She was his partner, both in the company and in life. After she returned, she had helped him rebuild the charity division, turning it into a foundation that offered scholarships to single-parent students, something close to her heart. It was her idea. He just made sure the world saw her name beside it. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Ethan looked up from his work to see her standing by the window, arms crossed, smiling at the view. You are thinking again, she teased. Dangerous habit. You would know, he said, walking over. You are the reason my life became one long, dangerous habit. You mean a good one, she said, raising an eyebrow. Mostly, he replied, then softened. It has been a year. Since the chaos arrived? She asked with a grin. Since you changed everything, he said. She laughed quietly. You make it sound like I walked in with a storm cloud. You did, he said. And somehow, you cleared the air. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. Do you ever miss the old version of yourself? The one who had everything under control? He thought for a moment before answering. Control is overrated. I used to think perfection was power. Then you showed me that imperfection can be love. Her smile faltered for a second, replaced by something deeper: gratitude, maybe, or the ache of everything they had survived. You are getting good at this emotional honesty thing, she said softly. I have an excellent teacher, he replied. Outside, the city lights flickered on, scattering across the glass like stars. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "You already gave me the best job I ever had," she said, half joking. "Do not tell me you are promoting me again." He smiled, opening the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, the same shade of gold as the planner's cover. "No promotions," he said quietly. "Just a new partnership." Her breath caught. "Ethan, no contracts, no clauses," he said, taking her hand. "Just us, chaos and all." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, with tears glistening in her eyes, Lena nodded. "Yes," she whispered, "to the chaos, to us." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his thumb brushing against her skin. "You know," she said, smiling through tears, "this is probably the only deal you ever signed without reading the fine print." "I trust the person who wrote it," he said. Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance, the echo of an old storm that had once brought them together. Now, it sounded like a blessing. A few months later, their wedding was small, held on the rooftop of the same building where they first argued about coffee and deadlines. Friends, colleagues, and even a few former rivals attended. As they exchanged vows under the warm glow of city lights, Lena looked at him and said, "You hired me to bring order into your life. Turns out, I was just here to make it real." He smiled, tightening his hand around hers. "You did both," he said. "You turned chaos into home." When they kissed, the city below erupted in applause. Somewhere in that moment, the millionaire who once feared unpredictability finally understood the truth. Love was the most beautiful kind of chaos, and he would never trade it for anything.